A woman minister named Abby Norman shared a story on Facebook recently. Man noticing my collar, : Are you a preacher? Me. Yes. Man, I don't believe in woman preachers. Me. I'm literally standing right here. We women clergy face many uphill battles. Even today, 50 years since Rabbi Sally Presand became the very first North American woman rabbi to ever be ordained in 1973. Even today, as I begin the 20th year of my rabbinical career, how did that happen? All of us women rabbis owe an immeasurable debt to a woman of whom so few of us have ever heard. A woman who Rabbi Dahlia Marks calls a tragic heroine because public amnesia following the Holocaust led to her being forgotten for nearly 50 years. Because until 1991, this particular woman's papers remained buried in archives, and those who had known her had spoken little of her. This particular woman was a trailblazer, a brave pioneer, and a human being who shared her gifts with all those she encountered. Her name was Rabbi Regina Jonas. And I'd like to share her story with you all tonight. Rabbi Jonas' story didn't really come to light in its totality until 1991. When Dr. Katharina von Kellenbach, the German-born scholar and professor of religious studies at St. Mary's College of Maryland, discovered a single envelope in a small archive in East Berlin containing some of Regina Jonas's papers. It was housed in the Centrum Judaica in the new synagogue. This had been the spiritual home of the famous composer Louis Lewandowski, whose music we sometimes sing. Among her papers is a note dated November 6, 1942, written by an acquaintance of Jonas, explaining that these documents were given to him on the day that Jonas and her mother were deported to Theresienstadt. It's believed that this acquaintance was deported himself a few days later. Jonas's biographer, Rabbi Elisa Klaphek, wrote that Rabbi Jonas designed her legacy. She was very aware of what she wanted to leave for the world. She took into consideration that one day someone would come and find it and write about her. So her papers, overall contained in a small box, included the only known photo of her. We only have one. Wearing rabbinical robes and holding a book in her hand, looking very stately. A copy of her thesis, and the ordination certificate written by Rabbi Max Dieneman, which includes the following words: "Since I saw that her heart is with God and Israel, and that she dedicates her soul to her goal, and that she fears God, and that she passed the examination in matters of religious law, I herewith certify that she is qualified to answer questions of religious law and entitled to hold the rabbinic office. And may God protect her and guide her on all her ways." Rabbi Dieneman's signature was attested to by Rabbi Leo Beck. Ultimately, we know very little about Rabbi Regina Jonas. But what we do know is that she was born in Berlin in 1902 into a poor Orthodox Jewish family. As a young girl, she attended the Reichsstrasse synagogue, Reichsstrasse, forgive my pronunciations, where the rabbi, Dr. Max Weil, who lived from 1873 to 1942, tried to connect Orthodox practice with a liberal approach to Judaism, including allowing girls to have some type of bat mitzvah ceremony. At his urging, Jonas continued her Jewish studies at the liberal Hochschule für die Wissenschaft des Judentums, the Higher Institute for Jewish Studies. That one I can pronounce because we said it all the time in rabbinical school. And it was in Berlin, and she was there from 1924 to 1930. Now, all the other women in her class were there to become Jewish teachers. Jonas, like the men with whom she studied, however, was there to become a rabbi. In her quest, she had very little support, except for one rabbi, Rabbi Edward Baneth, who was determined to ordain her. Now, Rabbi Sally Presand, whom we had otherwise understood to be the very first woman rabbi until the discovery of Rabbi Regina Jonas, she wrote, "I feel that Regina Jonas and I are kindred spirits. I share her love for Jewish tradition and for preaching and teaching. I faced many of the same challenges that she faced and embraced many of the same ideals, particularly her belief that every person, man or woman, should be given an opportunity to realize his or her God-given potential. I was always held to a higher standard as a woman, as was she. And often, male rabbis and lay leaders told me to be patient. I hold her in high esteem for choosing to remain with her people during the horrors of the Holocaust." Well, just before Rabbi Jonas finished her training, wouldn't you know it, Rabbi Baneth died. So she finished her rabbinical thesis on the very appropriate topic, can a woman be a rabbi according to halachic sources? And of course, the answer was yes. And it received so much praise from all the rabbis at school. Nevertheless, none of them, not even the great Rabbi Dr. Leo Beck, who was known to have admired her scholarship, her piety, and her commitment, not one of them would agree to ordain her. So upon graduation, Jonas received a certificate qualifying her as an academic teacher of religion. Lovely, but not what she truly wanted. But finally, 5 years later, after she received her teaching certificate in 1935, Regina Jonas was ordained in a private ceremony by Rabbi Max Dyneman, the president of the General Association of Rabbis in Germany and a well-known scholar. Still, the name by which she was called shows how much she struggled to be accepted. She became known as Fräulein Rabbinerin Jonas, Miss Rabbi Jonas. Miss Rabbi. Miss Rabbi. Please don't call me Miss Rabbi Bellows. They couldn't just call her Rabbi. A 1936 article in Der Israelit, an Orthodox newspaper, cites a remark by Rabbi Joseph Karlbach, who lived from 1883 to 1942, describing Jonas's ordination as a form of, quote, treason and a caricature of Judaism, and as the introduction of hysteria, I'm holding my uterus, the introduction of hysteria to the sacred halls of our temple. Rabbi David Ellenson, who's one of the past presidents of the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion, and the rabbi who ordained me, explains, the decision to ordain women as rabbis matters. It matters because the patriarchal structure upon which Judaism was built and that remained hegemonic for millennia was correctly seen as no longer morally satisfactory. By extending rabbinical ordination to women, a process was begun that allowed Jewish women and men to understand that the exclusion of half our population from positions of authority in the public life of the Jewish people was inherently unethical, for it denied the full personhood of women. Women and men came to realize that a Judaism that did not allow the voices of women to be heard in communal discussions, and that did not affirm the full dignity of women as persons, was simply morally intolerable. And this realization facilitated the judgment that extended smicha, ordination, to women. The decision, he continues, to ordain women as rabbis has not resolved all the inequity of the past. However, that decision has ushered in a new era and initiated a process that allows for a new Jewish narrative to emerge, one in which gender justice can be realized, in which all people can participate as equals. There's yet a long way to go for the full promise of this journey of justice to be attained. However, the journey has begun, and that grants all of us cause for rejoicing. May this journey find ever-evolving fulfillment in the days ahead. He's such a marvelous writer. Now, initially, Rabbi Jonas worked in schools and in hospitals and in homes for the elderly. Note what's missing there. But as more and more rabbis chose to leave Berlin or were taken away, she was asked by congregations around the area to come and preach. And she was praised for her natural gift at preaching, for her ability to speak profoundly, her knowledge of Torah and text, and her capacity to make Torah accessible to all ages. And yet, in November of 1942, she was deported to Theresienstadt, where unbelievably, she kept teaching and preaching and serving the Jewish people there. There she worked with Viktor Frankl, the famous psychoanalyst, and they worked together to comfort and console the newly arrived prisoners. A few of Jonas's papers remain at Theresienstadt, including a handwritten list of more than 20 lecture topics delivered at the camp, including the role of women in Judaism, the role of women in the Bible, women in the Talmud, and Jewish holidays and beliefs. An excerpt from one of these sermons survives, and we actually studied it in Holy Scrollers a few weeks ago. It states, "Our Jewish people was planted by God into history as a blessed nation." Imagine hearing this in a camp. Blessed by God means to offer blessings, loving kindness, and loyalty, regardless of place and situation. Humility before God, selfless love for his creatures, sustain the world. It is Israel's task to build these pillars of the world. Man and woman, women and man alike have taken this upon themselves in Jewish loyalty. Our work in Theresienstadt, in Terezin, serious and full of trials though it is, also serves this end, to be God's servants and as such to move from earthly spheres to eternal ones. May all our work be a blessing for Israel's future and the future of humanity. Upright Jewish men and brave, noble women were always the sustainers of our people. May we be found worthy by God to be numbered in the circle of these women and men. The reward is a mitzvah in the recognition of the great deed by God. And it is signed, Rabbi Regina Jonas, formerly of Berlin. Rabbi Jonas and her mother were taken to Auschwitz in October 1944, the weekend of Parashat Bereshit, where they were murdered. So now each year, when we read Bereshit, the very beginning of the Torah, the story of the creation of the world, it's become a tradition to mark Rabbi Jonas's yortzeit. In Rosh Hashanah, the day on which we mark the birthday of the world, the creation of the world, a creation by a God who dreamt up such a remarkable, brave, trailblazing woman, is even more fitting as a day of tribute for her. Now here's an interesting point. Rabbi Jonas was known by at least two prominent figures who survived the Holocaust, Rabbi Leo Beck and Dr. Viktor Frankl. Yet neither of them ever mentioned her after the war. It would be nearly 50 years until we truly got to know her and learn about her legacy. 50 years until her soul could rest peacefully with us celebrating all that she had been through and all that she had fought for. In July 2014, a delegation of rabbis, scholars, and lay leaders traveled to Berlin and to Theresienstadt to memorialize and celebrate the life of Regina Jonas on the 70th anniversary of her death. The trip was organized as part of the U.S. Commission for the Preservation of America's Heritage Abroad and by HUC-JIR and of the Jewish Women's Archive. The participants included all four of the firsts, the first women rabbis from all four major Jewish movements. Rabbi Sally Priesand, the first Reform woman rabbi, ordained in, as we said, 1972 or 73 by HUC-JIR. Rabbi Sandy Sasso, the first Reconstructionist woman rabbi, ordained in 74 by the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College. Rabbi Amy Eberg, the first conservative woman rabbi, ordained in 1985 by the Jewish Theological Seminary. And Rabbah Sarah Hurwitz, the first Orthodox woman rabbi, ordained by Rabbi Avi Weiss in 2009. It's been that long already since the first Orthodox woman rabbi. Now, in reflecting on this incredible trip, Rabbi Sandy Eisenberg Sasso, a renowned storyteller, wrote, "I always understood time travel as science fiction, but as we journey in space, so we journey in time, inhaling the old and breathing out new life. All of us who took this extraordinary pilgrimage did so not to return to the past, but to discover the times, events, places, and people that still live in us and, knowingly or not, shape our future. Rabbi Amy Eberg pointed out, Rabbi Regina Jonas' story has been written out of history twice. Once because the Nazis robbed her of her life, and again because the post-war Jewish community was unready to celebrate her story. But this week, our delegation embraced Rabbi Regina Jonas as our foremother, teacher, and colleague, pledging to remember her gifts, her vision, and her courage. Rabbi Laura Geller, one of the, what we call vatikot, the first number of women rabbis who really, as a group, were the trailblazers of like the first 10 years of women rabbis. She wrote a piece entitled Rediscovering Regina Jonas, the First Woman Rabbi, in a book called The Sacred Calling, 4 Decades of Women in the Rabbinate. She explains that this delegation at one point stood before a plaque in this cave-like mausoleum at Theresienstadt. And she shares the cremated ashes of those who died there had been stored in that place. And we gathered to dedicate a plaque that read, "To be blessed by God means to give, wherever one steps, in every life situation, blessing, kindness, and faithfulness." And it continued, Regina Jonas, 1902 to 44, the first woman rabbi in history, spoke these words in a sermon at Theresen. Born in Berlin, Jonas was ordained in 1935. She served the Jewish community of Berlin in a rabbinical capacity from 1937 to November 1942, when she was deported to Theresen. With extraordinary spiritual strength, she continued to preach uplifting sermons, give lectures, and provide pastoral care to her fellow prisoners. In October 1944, she was deported to Auschwitz, where she was murdered. And on that sacred land, they chanted El Malei Rachamim for the soul of Harav Malka Reina Bat Zev Wolf Vasara. And Rabbi Geller shares that at that moment, she could feel Rabbi Jonas's soul soar. And I hope that by sharing her story with you all on this first day of 5784, 88 years after her ordination, when so much has changed for women rabbis, but plenty has not, that her soul is soaring once again. I pray that she feels pride in how far women rabbis and now non-binary rabbis and transgender rabbis and LGBTQ rabbis of all kinds have come in this world, because she truly was the one who opened doors for so many people. I hope that she feels pride in how far everyone has come. And one day, perhaps Rabbi Jonas's own words will come true. I hope a time will come for all of us in which there will be no more questions of the subject of woman. For as long as there are questions, something is wrong. But if I must say what drove me as a woman to become a rabbi, 2 elements come to mind: my belief in my godly calling and my love for people. God has placed abilities and callings in our hearts without regard to gender. Thus, each of us has a duty, whether man or woman, to realize those gifts God has given. And if you look at things this way, one takes woman and man for what they are, human beings. So I hope that you have a greater appreciation for even this one aspect of the history of the past 50 years of women rabbis, which is more accurately 88 years since Rabbi Jonas's ordination. Zichrona livracha. May Rabbi Regina Jonas's memory forever inspire us all, never again to be forgotten, and forever be a blessing. Amen.
Amen.
One last note. There's a great children's book about her called Regina Persisted, An Untold Story.